Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of his ship as the metal floor made small creaking sounds under his boots. Everything around him looked old and broken. Wires hung from the ceiling. Rust covered the walls. The lights flickered on and off. To anyone looking at it, the ship seemed ready to fall apart. But Jake knew better. This was exactly how they wanted it to look. "Captain, we have incoming ships on the scanner," said Ben Carter from his station. Ben was young, maybe years old, with short brown hair and quick fingers that moved across his control panel. He had been watching the space around them for hours. Jake turned to look at the main screen. 12 bright dots appeared against the black of space. "We're moving fast toward the human colony world called New Haven." Each dot was a Volduran warship. The Voldans were aliens who thought they owned the galaxy. Their ships looked like beautiful crystal sculptures that could fly through space. They were smooth and perfect and deadly. "They are big ships, Captain," said Amy Lewis from her navigator seat. She was a small woman with blonde hair pulled back tight. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry in it. "The biggest one is 3 times our size." Jake nodded. He had expected this. The Vulcans always traveled in large groups. When they wanted to take over a new world, they liked to show off their power. They wanted everyone to see how strong they were. "Lisa, how are our systems?" Jake asked. Chief Engineer Lisa Baker looked up from her station. She was tall and had red hair that was always messy from working with machines. Her hands were dirty with grease, but her eyes were bright and smart. "Everything is working perfectly, Captain. All systems are ready." Jake smiled a little. Lisa was the best engineer in the human fleet. She could make broken things work and working things look broken. That was exactly what they needed today. Double quotes. "Ryan, are our weapons ready?" Jake asked. Weapons specialist Ryan Clark was a big man with dark skin and strong arms. They'd been a soldier before he joined the ship's crew. "All weapons are ready, Captain. Was waiting for your word." The main screen changed now. It showed the face of an alien. The Volduran had purple skin and 4 eyes. His mouth was full of sharp teeth. This was War Admiral Zdgar, the commander of the Volduran fleet. "Humans of the system," the alien said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "I am War Admiral Zdgar of the Volduran Empire. You will surrender your world to us now. Any resistance will be met with complete destruction." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force. This system belongs to humanity. Leave now and no one gets hurt." The Volduran's 4 eyes looked at Jake, then at the bridge behind him. The alien started to laugh. It was a horrible sound that made everyone on the bridge feel cold. "Defense Force," Zdgar said between laughs. "Is this some kind of joke? Your ship looks like a piece of garbage floating in space. Are you humans so desperate that you send your trash collectors to fight us?" More voices could be heard laughing. In the background, other Volduran officers were finding this very funny. "Look at that pathetic vessel," another Volduran voice said. "It is falling apart. I can see holes in the hull from here." "Perhaps we should just ignore it," said a third voice. "It might fall apart on its own before we can destroy it." Zdgar's laugh got louder. "No, I think we should make an example of this garbage scow. We destroy it. Any other humans watching will know how hopeless their situation is." Jake kept his face calm, but inside he was pleased. The Vulcans were reacting exactly as he had hoped they would. They saw his ship and thought it was weak. They thought humans were stupid and desperate. "Chris, are you getting all of this?" Jake asked quietly. Tactical Officer Chris Hayes was a thin man with glasses who spent most of his time looking at computer screens. He nodded. "Recording everything, Captain. Their formations, their weapon positions, everything." The Volduran ships were moving closer now. They were not being careful. Were not keeping their shields up. They were not ready for a real fight. They thought this would be easy. Jake looked around at his crew and was still monitoring communications. Amy was tracking the enemy ships. Lisa was making sure all their hidden systems were working. Ryan was ready with the weapons. Chris was gathering information about the enemy. These people had trained for 2 years for this moment. The ship around them was not really falling apart. It was humanity's newest and most secret weapon, but it was designed to look like junk. It was designed to make enemies think humans were weak and stupid. "Captain, they are sending 3 ships to intercept us," Amy reported. "The rest are continuing toward New Haven." "Perfect. Jake said. That is exactly what we wanted them to do. The three Voldoran ships that were coming toward them were beautiful. The crystal holes reflected the light of nearby stars. They moved through space like dancers, smooth and graceful. Each one could probably destroy a human city with one shot from their main weapons. But Jake was not worried. Looked at his crew one more time. Everyone ready? Ready, Captain, they all said. Jake sat down in his captain's chair. The old leather was cracked and patched. Like everything else on the bridge, it looked worn out and used up, but it was comfortable and Jake had made many important decisions while sitting in it. Lisa, keep our power readings low, he ordered. I want them to think we are about to lose power completely. Already on it, Captain, Lisa said. She pressed some buttons and the lights on the bridge got dimmer. The computer screens flickered more. To anyone watching from outside, the ship looked like it was dying. Ben, send them a distress signal, Jake said. Make it sound like we are scared and asking for help. Ben nodded and started typing. Soon, a message was being broadcast to the Voldoran ships. It said that the human ship was having mechanical problems and requested assistance. This made the Voldorans laugh even harder. They are asking for help, Istra said to his officers. The humans are so pathetic. They want us to save them. Should we help them, Ward Morrill? Asked one of his officers. Still laughing. Yes, Sethra said with an evil smile. We will help them. We'll help them die quickly. The three Voldoran ships got closer. Their crews were relaxed and confident. They thought they were about to destroy a helpless human vessel. They had no idea what was really coming toward them through the darkness of space. Jake watched the enemy ships approach and smiled. Soon, the Voldarans would learn that underestimating humans was a very dangerous mistake. The 12 Voldoran ships spread out across space like a deadly flower. Each ship was a work of art. The crystal holes glowed with soft blue light. Energy shields shimmered around them like soap bubbles made of light. Weapon ports lined their sides, each one capable of destroying a mountain. The largest ship, Istra's flagship, was called the Sovereignty of Stars. It was massive, easily 10 times bigger than any human vessel anyone had ever seen. Its crystal spires reached out like the arms of some giant sea creature. Power readings from the ship were off the charts in comparison. The human ship looked like a pile of scrap metal held together with tape and hope. Black smoke drifted from several places on its hull. Parts of the outer armor had fallen off, floating behind the ship like a trail of garbage. The name USS Defiance was barely visible on the side, painted over what looked like rust stains. War Admiral, should we even bother with this wreck? Asked Commander Velter from one of the escort ships. His voice came through the communication system with barely hidden laughter. It looks like it might fall apart if we breathe on it too hard. Seth Carr studied the human vessel on his screen. His four eyes moved independently, each one focusing on different parts of the ship. Look at those energy readings, Commander. The reactor is barely putting out enough power to keep the lights on. I have seen children's toys with more power on the bridge of the Defiance. Lisa Baker smiled as she watched her instruments. Every fake energy reading was perfect. Every false system failure was exactly where it should be. She had spent months programming the ship's computers to lie to any scanner that looked at them. Captain, they are buying it completely, she whispered to Jake. Their scanners are reading exactly what we want them to read. Jake nodded, but kept his face serious. Through the main viewer, he could see the beautiful Voldoran ships getting closer. 3 of them had broken off from the main group and were heading straight for the Defiance. The others continued toward New Haven, where 50,000 human colonists waited in fear. Ben, what are they saying on their private channels? Jake asked. Ben Carter's fingers danced over his controls. The Voldarans thought their communications were secure, but human technology had improved a lot in recent years. They are making jokes, Captain. One officer just suggested they use the human ship for target practice. Another said they should capture it and put it in a museum as an example of primitive technology. Amy Lewis checked her navigation display. Captain, the main fleet will reach New Haven in 4 hours. The 3 ships heading for us will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Oh. Jake looked around at his crew. Each person was playing their part perfectly. To anyone watching, they looked worried and scared. Ryan Clark was pretending to have trouble with his weapon systems, muttering and hitting his controls. Chris Hayes was acting like his computers were failing, shaking his head and sighing loudly. But Jake could see the truth in their eyes. They were not scared. They were excited. They trained for this day for 2 years. Every simulation, every test, every late night working on the ship had led to this moment. "Lisa, how long until you can bring us to full power?" Jake asked quietly. 30 seconds, Captain," Lisa replied. All systems are ready. I just need to flip a few switches and we will go from looking like junk to being the most powerful ship in this system." The Voldern ships were getting closer. Through the viewer, Jake could see details on their hulls. They were beautiful in a cold, deadly way. Each ship was perfectly designed for war. Their weapon systems were works of art. Their engines left trails of blue fire behind them. Captain Morrison came through his voice over the communication system. "I am curious about something. Why did your people send such a pathetic vessel to face us? Do you not care about your own lives?" Jake stood up slowly, making sure to look tired and defeated. "War Admiral, this is the best ship we have. Humanity is not as advanced as your empire. We know we cannot win, but we had to try to protect our people." This made the Volderans laugh even harder. "The best ship you have," Zigger said. "This piece of junk is the best humanity can build. I almost feel sorry for your species." "Perhaps we should just leave it alone," suggested one of the other Voldoran commanders. "It would be more merciful to let it drift in space until it falls apart on its own." "No," Isther said firmly. "This will be a lesson. Don't. When we destroy this ship, every human in the galaxy will know that resistance is hopeless. They will surrender without a fight when they see how easily we crush their best efforts." Chris Hayes was monitoring the Voldern tactical systems. What he saw made him want to laugh, but he kept his face serious. "Captain, they are not even charging their main weapons. Their shields are at minimum power. They think this is going to be so easy that they do not need to prepare for battle." "Oh." Jake felt a cold satisfaction in his chest. The Voldorans were making exactly the mistakes human strategists had hoped they would make. Their arrogance was going to be their downfall. "Amy, adjust our course to make it look like we are trying to run away," Jake ordered. "But make sure we stay in the perfect position for our attack." Amy's fingers moved over her controls. The Defiance changed direction slightly, moving in a way that looked panicked and desperate. To the Volderans, it would seem like the humans were trying to escape, but were too slow and clumsy to get away. "They were trying to run," laughed Commander Voldor. "Look at that pathetic attempt at evasive maneuvers. My grandmother could fly better than that and she has been dead for 200 years. The 3 Voldern ships spread out in a hunting formation. They were taking their time, enjoying the chase. They wanted to make the human ship suffer before they destroyed it. Ben Carter intercepted more of their communications. "Captain, they are discussing which weapons to use on us. One commander wants to use their weakest gun so the ship will take longer to die. Others suggest they should just ram us with their ship." Jake clenched his fists but kept his voice calm. "Let them talk. In a few minutes, they will not be laughing anymore." The Voldoran ships were now close enough that Jake could see individual weapon ports on their hulls. Each ship had dozens of them. Any one of those weapons could destroy a city. Together, the 3 ships had enough firepower to turn a planet unto dust. But Jake was not worried. He looked at Lisa and nodded slightly. She nodded back and put her hand on a red button marked full power. "Ryan, are you ready?" Jake asked. Ryan Clark's hand moved to his own controls. His weapon systems were not broken like he had been pretending. In fact, they were the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. "Ready, Captain." "Just give me the word." The closest Voldoran ship was now only a few kilometers away. "It's beautiful." Crystal Hole gleamed in the starlight. Its commander was probably thinking about how he would be rewarded for destroying the human vessel. Jake sat back in his captain's chair and smiled. "Gentlemen, ladies, it is time to show these aliens what humanity is really capable of. All hands, prepare for combat. This is going to be interesting." The first Voldoran ship moved within firing range of the Defiance. Commander Velter sat in his crystal command chair, watching the pathetic human vessel try to limp away. His crew was relaxed and joking with each other. Some were even taking pictures of the human ship to show their friends later. "This is almost too easy," Velter said to his weapons officer. "I feel like we are picking on children." "Should I charge the main guns, Commander?" asked the weapons officer. "No need. Ra replied with a wave of his hand. "Use the smallest weapon we have. Let this take a while. I want the humans to understand how hopeless their situation is." On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake Morrison watched the enemy ship get closer. His heart was beating fast, but his face was calm and everything was going exactly according to plan. The Verants were so confident that they had not even raised their shields. Captain Amy Lewis said quietly, "We are in perfect position." Jake looked at Lisa Baker. She had her hand on the red button that would change everything. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "Lisa." Now Lisa pressed the button. The change was instant and shocking. The Defiance had been drifting through space like a dying animal. Suddenly, it came alive like a sleeping dragon waking up. Fake damage disappeared. As hidden armor plates slid into place, the flickering lights became steady and bright. The weak engine glow became a blazing fire of power. Most surprising of all, weapon ports open all along the ship's hull. These were not the simple guns the Voldorans expected humans to have. These were advanced plasma weapons that glowed with deadly energy. On Commander Velter's ship, alarm started screaming. His sensor operator stared at his screen in shock. "Commander, the human ship, its power readings just increased by 3,000%. Belter jumped out of his chair. "That is impossible." "Show me." The main screen changed to show the Defiance. No longer looked like a piece of junk. It looked like a predator made of metal and energy. Act weapon systems that had been hidden were now glowing with power. The ship that had seemed ready to fall apart was now clearly one of the most advanced vessels any of them had ever seen. "Shields up, all weapons to full power," Velter shouted, but it was too late. Ryan Clark had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. His finger pressed down on the firing button. Firing main weapons. Blue beams of energy shot out from the Defiance. These were not the primitive weapons the Voldorans expected. These were plasma lances that could cut through the strongest materials in the galaxy. They moved at the speed of light and hit with the power of a small star. The first beam hit Commander Velter's ship before his shields could come online. The beautiful crystal hull cracked like glass. The beam cut through the ship from front to back, slicing it into pieces. The explosion that followed lit up space like a new sun. Commander Velter and his entire crew died before they could even understand what had happened to them. The second Voldoran ship tried to turn away, but Amy Lewis had predicted this. She had positioned the Defiance perfectly. There was nowhere for the enemy to run. Ryan's second shot caught the ship as it tried to escape. The ship lasted a few seconds longer because its captain managed to get partial shields up, but it made no difference. The plasma lance cut through the shields like they were made of paper. The third Voldoran ship managed to fire back. Its captain, Commander Rick Bull, was quicker than the others. His ship's main weapon fired a bolt of energy that could have destroyed a city. It hit the Defiance directly, but nothing happened. The energy bolt struck the human ship and simply disappeared. The Defiance's hull did not even get hot. "Impossible," Rick Ball screamed. "No ship can absorb that much energy." But Lisa Baker had built more than just fake damage into the Defiance. Ship's hull was covered with experimental armor that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. The more the enemy shot at them, the stronger the human ship became. Ryan Clark fired again. The third Voldoran ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal in less than 30 seconds. 3 of the most advanced warships in the Voldoran fleet had been completely destroyed. The human ship they had been laughing at had turned out to be a monster in disguise. On the flagship Sovereignty of Stars, Wordstor stared at his screen in horror. His 4 eyes could not believe what they were seeing. The 3 ships he had sent to destroy the human garbage skull were gone. In their place was a cloud of glowing debris. "Report!" he shouted at his officers. "What just happened?" "Sir, the human vessel was not what it appeared to be," his sensor officer said with a shaking voice. "Wait, it is reading as a Dreadnought-class warship. Power levels are beyond anything in our database." "That is impossible," Wordstor said, but his voice was no longer confident. "Humans do not have that kind of technology." On the Defiance, Jake Morrison stood up from his captain's chair. The bridge around him no longer looked old and broken. With full power running through the ship, everything was clean and modern and deadly. "Ben, open a channel to the Voldoran fleet," Jake ordered. "Channel open, Captain," Ben Carter replied. Jake looked directly into the camera that would send his image to every Voldoran ship. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. "War Admiral Str. This is Captain Jake Morrison. I believe you called my ship a garbage scow." On his flagship, Str felt fear for the first time in his long military career. The human on his screen did not look desperate or scared. He looked dangerous. "You were saying something about making an example of us," Jake continued. "I think that is an excellent idea, Chris. Send our current position in this conversation to every human ship and colony in the sector. I want everyone to see what happens when someone underestimates humanity." Chris Hayes pressed buttons on his control panel, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Captain, the whole galaxy will see this." Amy Lewis checked her navigation display. "Captain, the remaining Volduran ships are changing course. They are coming toward us." Jake smiled, but it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just cornered its prey. "Good, let them come." "Ryan, how are our weapons?" Ryan Clark looked at his control panel. Every weapon system was at full power and ready to fire. "All weapons ready, Captain. We have enough firepower to take on their entire fleet." Jake sat back down in his chair. Round him, his crew prepared for the biggest space battle in human history. The Voldurans had made a terrible mistake. They had thought humans were weak and primitive. They had laughed at humanity's best ship and called it garbage. Now they were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you do not take seriously. "All hands prepare for combat," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "Today we show the galaxy that humanity is not to be mocked. Today we prove that Earth's children are ready to take their place among the stars." The remaining 9 Volduran ships were moving toward them now, their weapons charging and their shields at full power. But Jake was not worried. The hardest part was already over. The enemy had fallen into their trap perfectly. Now came the fun part. The 9 remaining Volduran ships moved through space in perfect formation. The crystal holes gleamed with deadly purpose. Energy shields shimmered around each vessel like protective bubbles. This time they were not taking any chances. Every weapon was charged and ready. Every shield was at maximum power. War Admiral Str stood on the bridge of his flagship. Then, his 4 eyes fixed on the human ship that had just destroyed 3 of his best vessels. The sovereignty of stars was the pride of the Volduran fleet. It was twice as big as any other ship in the formation and carried enough weapons to destroy entire planets. "All ships attack Formation 7, Str commanded. "Surround a human vessel. Do not let it escape. I want every gun firing at once." The Volduran ships spread out like the points of a star, each one taking position to attack the Defiance from a different angle. Their plan was simple but effective. No matter how powerful the human ship was, it could not fight in all directions at the same time. But Jake Morrison had been expecting this. He watched the enemy ships move into position and smiled. "Amy, take us into the middle of their formation." Amy Lewis looked at her captain with surprise. "Sir, that will put us right in the center of their firepower, exactly where I want us," Jake replied. "Trust me." The Defiance moved forward, heading straight into the trap the Voldurans had set. To the alien commanders, it looked like the human captain had made a terrible mistake. They would be able to hit the ship from every direction while it could only fire at one target at a time. "The human is panicking," said Commander Neville from one of the escort ships. "He is flying right into our trap." Str watched the human ship approach and felt his confidence returning. "Prepare to fire on my command. All ships will fire together." Nothing can survive that much concentrated firepower. On the Defiance, Lisa Baker was making final adjustments to the ship systems. "Captain, all defensive systems are ready. The absorption panels are at full capacity." Jake nodded. The absorption panels were humanity's greatest secret. They could take energy from enemy weapons and turn it into power for their own systems. The more the enemy shot at them, the stronger the Defiance would become. "Chris, are you tracking all their weapon systems?" Jake asked. Chris Hayes stared at his screens, watching 9 different targeting systems lock onto their ship. "Yes, Captain, I have control of their targeting computers. When you give the word, I can make their shots miss us and hit each other instead." This was another human innovation the Voldans did not know about. Human computer specialists had learned to hack alien systems during years of secret preparation. The Voldans thought their targeting systems were secure, but Chris could control them like they were his own. "Ryan, are you ready?" Jake asked. Ryan Clark's hands moved over his weapon controls. The Defiance carried more firepower than any ship its size had a right to have. "All weapons ready, Captain. Just pick your targets." The Voldor ships were now in perfect position. Defiance sat in the center of their formation like a fly caught in a spider's web. Every alien ship had a clear shot at the human vessel. "Fire!" Istra shouted. 9 Voldoran ships fired at once. Beams of energy that could melt mountains shot through space toward the Defiance. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The combined attack lit up the darkness like lightning in a storm. But Chris Hayes was ready. His fingers danced over his controls as he took control of the Voldern targeting systems. Half of the energy beams that should have hit the Defiance were redirected to hit other Voldern ships instead. The aliens watched in horror as their own weapons struck their own vessels. 2 ships were hit by friendly fire and their shields collapsed. Another ship was struck by 3 different beams and exploded instantly. The energy beams that did hit the Defiance were absorbed by Lisa Baker's special hull panels. The human ship glowed briefly as it soaked up the enemy attack. Then the glow faded. The Defiance was not only undamaged, it was now more powerful than before. "Impossible!" Skr screamed. "Our weapons are hitting our own ships." His tactical officer stared at his screens in confusion. "Sir, something is interfering with our targeting systems. Our computers are not responding properly." Jake Morrison stood up from his captain's chair. Round him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this exact situation hundreds of times in simulators. Oh, it was real, and they were performing perfectly. "Ryan, take out the damaged ships first," Jake ordered. Ryan Clark fired the Defiance's main weapons. The plasma lances struck the 2 Voldern ships with collapsed shields. Without protection, the beautiful crystal hulls cracked and shattered. Both ships broke apart in seconds, the crews dying before they could send distress signals. "Amy, bring us around to face their flagship," Jake commanded. Amy Lewis spun the ship in a tight circle that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size, but the Defiance had hidden maneuvering systems that made it as agile as a fighter craft. The ship danced through space, avoiding enemy fire while staying in perfect position to attack. The remaining 6 Voldoran ships tried to reform their attack, but Jake was not giving them time to think. "Chris, target their communication systems. I want them confused and unable to coordinate." Chris Hayes sent computer viruses into the Voldoran fleet network. Suddenly, the alien ships could not talk to each other. Each captain was fighting alone, not knowing what the others were doing. "Ben, are you getting all of this?" Jake asked. Ben Carter nodded as he recorded everything that was happening. Broadcasting lived to every human colony and ship in the sector. "Captain, they can see everything." Jake smiled. This battle was not just about defeating the Voldorans. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity was no longer the weak species that could be pushed around. Anyone who tried to attack human worlds would face the same fate as these ships. Ryan fired again, and another Voldoran ship exploded. Its death lit up the faces of the crew on the Defiance bridge. They were winning, but Jake knew the hardest part was still to come. The flagship Sovereignty of Stars was still intact, and it was the most powerful ship in the Voldern fleet. Zethar was probably gathering his remaining ships for one final desperate attack. "Captain, the flagship is charging its main weapon," Amy reported. "Energy readings are off the charts." Jake looked at the massive Voldoran vessel on his screen. It was beautiful in a cold, deadly way, but beauty would not save it from what was coming. "All hands, prepare for the final phase," Jake announced. "Time to show them what happens when you mock humanity." The flagship Sovereignty of Stars floated alone in space. Round it drifted the burning remains of the once mighty Voldoran fleet. 8 ships had been destroyed. Only 3 escort vessels remained, and they were keeping their distance from a human ship that had turned their proud armada into space debris. War Admiral Carr stood on his bridge, his 4 eyes staring at the destruction. His beautiful fleet was gone. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were now nothing but glowing metal and gas clouds, all because he had underestimated a species he thought was primitive and weak. "Sir, should we retreat?" asked his tactical officer. The young Voldorans. The voice was shaking with fear. Zathras' hands tightened into fists. He had spent his entire life building his reputation as a conqueror. He had destroyed civilizations and enslaved entire worlds. He could not run away from a single human ship, no matter how powerful it was. "No," he said through gritted teeth. "Charge the planet killer weapon. If I cannot defeat this ship, I will make sure it dies with me." On the Defiance, Jake Morrison watched the massive alien flagship preparing for its final attack. The ship's main. But as the energy faded, the Defiance was still there. Not only was it undamaged, it was glowing with absorbed power. The planet killer weapon had made it stronger than ever before. "Impossible," Zthra whispered. His most powerful weapon had done nothing but feed energy to his enemy. On the Defiance, Lisa Baker watched her power readings climb higher than they had ever been. "Captain, we are at maximum energy absorption. The Nova cannon is ready to fire." Jake Morrison stood up from his chair and walked to the front of the bridge. Through the main viewer, he could see the Voldorn flagship. It was still beautiful, even after firing its most powerful weapon. But its beauty would not save it. "Ben, open a channel to all remaining Voldorn ships," Jake ordered. "Channel open, Captain," Ben Carter replied. Jake looked directly into the camera that would carry his words to every surviving alien vessel. His voice was calm but filled with deadly promise. "War Admirals, you came to our system to conquer our people. You laughed at our ship and called it garbage. You thought humanity was weak and stupid." On his flagship, Zthra listened to the human captain's words and felt cold fear spreading through his body. "You were wrong," Jake continued. "Humanity has been preparing for this day for years. We let you underestimate us because that made you careless. We let you think we were weak because that made you vulnerable. Now you will pay the price for your arrogance." Jake turned to Ryan Clark. "Fire the Nova cannon." Ryan's hand moved to a special control that he had hoped he would never have to use. The Nova cannon was the most destructive weapon humanity had ever built. It used the power of a small sun compressed into a single beam of annihilation. "Firing Nova cannon," Ryan announced. A beam of energy shot out from the Defiance that made the Voldoran planet killer look like a flashlight. It was pure destruction made visible. Lance of power that could cut through anything in the universe. The beam hit the sovereignty of stars and passed completely through it. The massive flagship pride of the Voldoran fleet simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next it was expanding gas and radiation. War Admiral Zathra and his entire crew died as quickly. They never knew what hit them. The three remaining Voldorn escort ships turned and fled as fast as their engines could carry them. They had seen enough. The humans they had come to conquer had destroyed their entire fleet with a single ship that they had mistaken for scrap metal. Jake Morrison watched the enemy ships disappear into the darkness of space. He felt no joy in the victory, only satisfaction that his people were safe. The Voldorans would think twice before attacking another human world. "Ben, send a message to New Haven Colony," Jake ordered. "Tell them the threat is over. They can come out of their shelters." "Already sent," Captain Ben replied with a smile. "They're asking if we need any help." Jake laughed. "Tell them we have everything under control." Chris Hayes looked up from his station. "Captain, I am receiving messages from Voldoran ships throughout this sector. They are requesting permission to leave human space immediately." "Granted," Jake said. "But make sure they know that any Voldorn ship that enters human territory again will meet the same fate as this fleet." Amy Lewis checked her navigation. "Systems Captain, where should I set course for?" Jake sat back down in his chair and looked around at his crew. They had done something incredible today. A single human ship had defeated an entire alien armada. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. "Take us home, Amy," Jake said. "I think Earth will want to hear about this." The Defiance turned toward home. Jake thought about the message this battle would send throughout the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the weak, primitive species that could be pushed around by anyone with superior technology. They had proven that intelligence, planning, and determination could overcome any advantage. The age of human expansion had begun. It started with enemies who made the mistake of judging a book by its cover. The Voldorans had seen a scrap ship and thought they faced garbage collectors. Instead, It faced humanity's finest warriors flying humanity's most advanced weapon. It was a mistake they would never make again. Neither would anyone else who heard this story. The stars belong to humanity now, and the galaxy would learn to respect that fact.